All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Time to go over chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the Vanishing Glass. Man, oh man, what can I say about this chapter other than what a sob story? And I say that in a good way. Chapter 2 is all about Harry and how the Dursleys are just the absolute worst Muggle family in existence. It's very heavy on how abusive and bad they treat this child. It starts off letting us know that 10 years have passed since the day that Harry was left on the doorsteps, or roughly 10 years. And in these 10 years, Harry has been constantly abused by all three members of the family. Vernon, very abusive to him. Vernon's wife, very abusive. And Dudley himself, just mean and physically abusive. Oh man, it seems as if they go out of their way to make this kid feel horrible and just to treat him so wrong. He's got chores, which is understandable, but the accusations that they make towards Harry are just they're so grand, it seems. And it's explained, that, okay, well, weird and strange things do happen when Harry's around, but just the way that they make him seem as if he is a detriment to themselves, it's outrageous. It's unfathomable. With this, I feel like J.K. Rowling was a bit excessive, but at the same time, I understand why she did it, because, there are people like that in the world, and, who are just mean-spirited and mean-hearted. I just find it hard to, wrap my head around these people being so mean to this orphan child. But it like I said, it makes sense, because that is how some people are. It's unfortunate, because we get things happening that can't be explained. And if you have read the book already and you understand where everything is coming from, it's interesting that Petunia she's clearly lying, about what's going on. She's delusional. She's crazy. She knows that there is a magical world. And that's what, she fears. She doesn't want to be a part of this magical world. And, she's making excuses for what's happening with Harry. She's acting like she doesn't know why these things are happening. His hair gets cut, and then the next day it's just as long as it was before it was cut. And she's acting like she doesn't know why it's happening. Put the shirt on, and then the shirt just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. Obviously, that's magic. You know this, lady. Why are you acting like you don't know? She knows she doesn't want him to be a part of that. She doesn't want him to be associated with that, because that in turn, makes her affiliated to it, and that could look bad on the family or something like that. That could mess up them, in the regular world, the Muggle world. But there's critically abusive in this chapter, and you just feel bad for Harry the entire way through this chapter, because we aren't given any indications that he himself is a good child per se, but we're left to assume, well, Harry probably is just a regular kid. not trying to get into trouble or anything like that. And yet he has to deal with all of this abuse that's falling into his lap out of nowhere. From Vernon, Petunia, and it's not fair. And that's what's so great about this chapter is just we get to feel how unfair it is. And nobody like that's what helps us as a writer. It helps us to grasp and to latch onto Harry like that, like the way we do, because it's just unfair how he's treated. And he doesn't deserve, it's not like he's done anything wrong. It's not like he's purposely causing trouble or anything. And you got to root for him, already in chapter 2, you have to root for him. And it's nice what happens towards the end, when they manage to make it to the zoo, and big spoiled Dudley is up on the glass, and he's got his face on the glass, and he punched Harry in the ribs, and knocked him down, and then the glass just vanishes. And all of a sudden, he's face to face with this big snake. He jump back, scared, terrified. It's a little bit of justice for Harry. And it also lets us see one of the actual instances happen where, these people are, I wouldn't necessarily say fearful, although there definitely is some fear that I believe they have. But while they're so anxious around Harry, and Vernon, he immediately, jumps into action, and he's, on his toes and just worried, thinking, oh man, Harry's going to do something wrong. He's going to do something wrong. They wouldn't let him in the car. They didn't want him in the car. They didn't want to leave him at the house. But when their other options ran out, they had to take Harry with them. And it was, you can tell that the whole time, Vernon is just thinking in the back of his head, I got to watch my back. What's this kid going to do? What's this kid going to do? So it's interesting. It's a very good chapter. It really lets us into it. It helps bring that whole 10-year span into context. You can feel, and I think that's part of how she wrote it, with it just being so many things back to back going wrong for Harry, and just how tense he was, or how tense we are about, what's happening, the fixing the bacon, and he's getting yelled at. He lives in a cupboard. He doesn't have any pictures of him at the house. They tell him not to ask questions about where he got his scar and his family, what happened. It's just a lot of push and negative onto Harry. And that I think that compression, all of that just in chapter 2 really helps us feel the 10-year span of this kid's trauma. So that's a good way to do that, instead of going back and saying, oh, this happened 5 years ago, and this happened 3 years ago, this was 2 years ago, we just get a bunch of things in one day, and that helps us feel what has been happening for 10 whole years. Very, very good chapter. Very good chapter. And then, we even get to see just how bad the bullying is towards him, where even Dudley's friend, is throwing Harry under the bus, talking about, oh, I saw Harry talking to the snake, and even them lying about how the snake almost wrapped me and constricted me to death, or the snake nearly bit my leg off, my entire leg. They're lying to make themselves seem like they were, a much larger victim than they actually were. Of course, these two kids, they were victims, essentially, but it wasn't anything near the scale of what they presented to, you know, the family and whatnot. Like I said, very good chapter. Very good chapter. I love this chapter. It just feels good. It feels good. One thing of note, chapter 1, I didn't mention this, but there was something that that threw me off guard. I feel like it might have been a slip up on J.K. Rowling's part. When the news reporter said that it was going to be, there were shooting stars, and then the news reporter said that there weren't going to be shooting stars, but it was going to be wet tonight. It was going to rain tonight. That was strange because apparently all day McGonagall had been sitting sitting in the neighborhood, and we didn't get any information about precipitation that day. When Hagrid came by, it was around midnight. Not Hagrid. Well, yeah, that was a little bit around midnight. But Dumbledore, he came around midnight. We didn't hear anything about puddles in the street or anything like that. Hagrid came. They dropped Harry off, and they said that they weren't going to. Well, they said that he would be there until Petunia woke up in the morning to change the milk out, which I would assume would be around, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that. And so it's strange. I feel like that was an inconsistency to have the weatherman say it's definitely going to be a wet one tonight, and Harry was out on the front steps until presumably 5 in the morning. So if anybody has any information on that, let me know. I would definitely want to know if that was an inconsistency or maybe I misunderstood that one. But anyway, chapter 2, wonderful. Absolutely love chapter 2. Can't wait to keep going.